Good evening and welcome to Momentous Live, episode 89. I'm from the class of 89. I'm
Really?
uh,
I'm Gray Williams, and I'm from the class of '99. So what does that tell you?
let's not get into
Uh,
that. Just the two of us. We've had a rotating cast of characters the last few weeks. We'll
Building
explain.
castles in the sky.
We'll talk. We'll talk about your absence in a moment, but just wanted to give a shout out to Jamie Reynolds and Ged Smythe for joining us over the last couple of weeks. And of course, Tasia is unavailable for a little bit. She should be back next week. And Will is still attending to some personal matters. He hopefully will be back next week as well. So we wish everyone all the best and all the thanks and all the good vibes as we proceed into our. We're taking a pause from our regularly scheduled Elon news for a change, and FTX news. Although it'll come up a little later
Yes.
in this episode. But we're going to start things off. Well, I was going to say on a positive note, but I actually switched the show flow a little bit. So we're going to start with a bit of a bummer, and we'll call this follow up from 36 years ago.
This one has a personal touch for me.
Yeah, so just recently, NASA confirms discovery of Space Shuttle Challenger disaster ruins in the ocean, as described in a History Channel documentary. And in some of the shots, you can see some of the tiles that were discussed ever so much in the post-mortem, literally, about the space shuttle disaster from 1986. I was in grade 9 at the time, and I remember we were in class during the day hearing about the news, and I think we flocked to the TV set, turn something on, and check out the news. It was quite shocking because there's some years between us, Gray, but I think we all have a certain affection for, the space program, NASA, and so on. And to have the first disaster of our generation, I think kind of hit home. So, what's your personal angle?
I was in Cape Canaveral for the launch.
What? Okay.
Yeah.
So when people ask, do you remember when?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like being in Dallas when JFK got assassinated. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Can you
I
tell
went.
us about, yeah, tell us about the trip in the day.
Well, the thing that I remember the most is just the shape of the cloud when it happened. My parents. I was 6, and my parents did a fairly good job, I think, of mitigating the issue by talking about like why things like this happen and how things like this happen. The thing I remember most actually is the drive along the Florida Turnpike. The launch was amazing to see. Like it's human beings breaking the bounds of gravity and getting into orbit. It's just awesome to see in general. When Ray and I went down to Louisiana not too long ago, you can cross over into Alabama. That you can actually see a Saturn V rocket there as well. And so this kind of like this hits home. I before we went down, I actually have a picture of I think it was Enterprise, which is the very first space shuttle, which is it's still on my wall. So I was home, in October, a couple of weeks back, and that's still on my wall. I was thinking about that at the time, and it was so for this story to pop up,
Pretty
it
heavy duty. Yeah.
feels like I'm in the Truman Show sometimes. I'm like, okay, the writers are weird. And like looking at this, so this actually kind of intersects a couple of things, which I mean, I was just down in Mexico diving, and I'm not wrecked certified yet, but we've dove around wrecks. We were around some boats down there, and literally like the day before this was found, we were diving, and I remember thinking to myself, there's going to be a time where diving space debris is going to be a thing, and this is mind blowing. Like it's a little like finding the Titanic. Remember Robert
Indeed.
Ballard back
Yep.
in the 80s around the time that this happened. It was 80, 89. He found that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Before James Cameron muscled his way in.
Well, it's funny because before Cameron, before Robert Ballard found the Titanic, people were under the impression that it was in one piece. So there was a movie called Raising the Titanic where they were filling it with ping pong balls so they could bring it back to the surface. And then famously in Ghostbusters 2, it sailed back into New York. But this is kind of, it's something where it's fascinating to be able to go and experience this and see this and find these things and get the evidence. And, as divers, like this is, you know, when we were down in Mexico, we were actually diving with a woman named Michelle, who is a forensics diver for, I believe, one of the San Diego area sheriffs. And she goes and dives after, bodies and guns and things like that. And so this is, one of the natural extensions of stuff like this is finding Challenger. Yeah, mind blowing.
So I guess the question is, will you be watching this documentary, or is it a little, does it hit a little too close to home for you?
Yeah, I will be watching it 100%. It's the sacrifice that those folks made. This goes right back to, was it Apollo 1 that caught fire? We've
On the launch pad. Yeah.
on the launch pad, yeah. And it's like the first people that we send to Mars probably won't be coming back. The sacrifices that folks make for the future of our species is important. And so recognizing that and witnessing that, I think, is a thing.
And on a related note, if you're interested in Mars, check out the current season of All Mankind, which I think recently wrapped. I'm a bit behind on it, and it's been a bit of a wobbly season, but stuff happens on Mars.
I'm on episode 2 of season 2, so I'll get caught up.
Sorry, spoiler alert.
They were going to Mars anyway. We knew it.
Yeah,
Venus was never an option.
I can't wait till you get caught up. Because, yeah, Venus.
There's that 2 kilometer layer of atmosphere that's breathable. Cloud City, man. It's a thing.
Exactly. Lando. In slightly more positive, actually much more positive space news, Artemis 1, after a couple of delays, finally took off, and some, of course, wonderful pictures from a liftoff, 32-story rocket, and ultimately we've got our first flyby photos of the moon, and a selfie of the craft, and a shot of Earth as well, the pale blue dot, a modern version.
Yep.
Gray, what's you want to you have an overview of your understanding of the Artemis mission. This is an unmanned mission, from what I understand, and this is a precursor to future NASA manned missions, correct?
Yes, and it's interesting because they're actually kind of following some of the plot of For All Mankind here, looking for water and in the very places where they think that they might find it for All Mankind. I love the name of this mission, because Artemis is the sister of Apollo. She is the huntress who, obviously going out there and looking for things that may feed us as we embark upon the stars.
And it's doing wonders for representation in naming.
Well, not just that, but if you take a look, the original Apollo missions were all men. And we actually have women on this mission. So it is actually, you're dead on. It really is showing some representation.
Don't say dead. Given the last story, don't say dead.
Yep, correct. Fair. Yeah. So
there are women involved with this mission, but not. So they're not on the craft. To be clear, they're operating on the ground, and they will be in future.
Yes, that's correct.
I was going to, manned missions, peopled missions, whatever we want to say, but
crude missions,
crude
right.
missions, crude, and we want Then there's homophones.
Easy.
So a little bit of good news. NASA is still. Obviously, they've been collaborating with SpaceX to great success, but they're still doing stuff on their own, and they have other contractors as well. It's kind of neat to see visually how this works. As we've got the moon orbiting the Earth and Artemis sort of launching, catching up with the moon and following it for a while, and then coming back. So, any idea what's the? It's going to come back to Earth, and then what?
I believe we're doing recovery on Orion, because so very very similar to what was done with the moon landers and the Eagle craft.
So Orion is the name of the craft on the Artemis mission, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so essentially, it's going to come down. We're going to retrieve the capsule. Basically, they're doing all of the tests to make sure that this, as a crewed mission, will be successful and will be safe for the astronauts involved. So this is basically, these are the dry runs that we have to do. The timeline here is compressed, which is, they've done a lot of the groundwork for years. So I'm very excited to see kind of what's next and the data that we get off it. When you think about it, the original Apollo missions, there's more computational power in I think the Series Zero Apple Watch than were in the computers that launched Apollo. So the safety and efficacy of these missions, I think, is going to be quite a bit higher. And hopefully we don't see any films involving Tom Hanks as Kid about any of these missions anytime soon.
Exactly. And if you are interested in seeing some of the amazing imagery that has been captured so far, you can take a look at our show notes, including a selfie that Orion snapped of itself while on the Artemis 1 mission. It's always so cool when you see images, taken in space, images of Earth taken from space. Helps reinforce that perspective. What's the phenomenon called that? Some astronauts have referred to, and more recently, William Shatner has referred to with a bit of sadness. I can't remember.
Is it not pale blue dot phenomenon or?
Yeah, there's an actual psychological phenomenon. I think we talked about it in the past, but
yeah,
it's just looking back and seeing how, like, in the vastness of space, what the various heavenly bodies like the Earth and look like. There's lots in space, but there's lots between us as well.
It's called the overview effect.
Exactly. Thank you for the real-time fact check on that one. So I think we could all use a little bit more overview and effect in our lives, when giving each other, some compassion, some empathy, remembering everyone's having a tougher time than it seems. When you look at that pale blue dot from space, it's a whole different perspective.
Yeah.
Not to get too sentimental, but
I can think of one owner of one company who could probably take a ride on his own rocket, maybe get that perspective. And onto that note.
So with the months and months of Twitter news that we've been discussing, and there's at least half a dozen stories that broke over the last week, some of which we might be touching on next week. And hopefully we've got the whole crew together, because we know that Tej always has lots of thoughts on Twitter particularly. But we wanted to focus this week on some of the proactive steps that people are taking in exploring alternatives. I think it kind of remains to be seen what happens, with Twitter ultimately when the dust settles. It's still very early days. There's a lot of, let's call it, creative destruction happening right now, whether it's mass layoffs, mass resignations, rehirings, re-engineerings, a lot of duct tape. And, sometimes, when I get the impulse to recreate something in one's image, and we've heard the term Twitter 2.0 being floated around, because, to be fair, Twitter was highly imperfect and people had a lot of concerns with it, but the solutions never seemed to address all of people's concerns, and who knows if we're going to have any of those. Just one case in point. People have talked about the arbitrary nature of the verification badge, and we thought, oh, great! Now we've got a system for people can get verified. They can pay for Twitter Blue, and that's all part of it. But there's no actual verification going on. It's just like and people warned, the brass at Twitter 2.0 that this would happen, and it's like, oh, but everything is happening in such a rushed fashion, so crazy. It's like, so now they put that whole program on pause for the time being. I know, Gray, that you had canceled your Twitter Blue and rage quit.
Yeah.
So there's we'll see what happens because it's you want things to be done like in a considered fashion and smart and engineered properly. But when it's just throwing spaghetti at a wall or going from like one dumpster fire to another in the grand dumpster fire, it's not going to be productive. So I think everyone take a breath. Give them a chance. But in the meantime, people are exploring other alternatives out there, and they've done it before. There's an article from 2017 when Mastodon, which we're going to be talking about now, first launched, and it's like, oh, all the cool kids are moving to Mastodon, and watch out, Twitter, and all the brands are there too. It's like, didn't really. And I started talking about it in my social media courses at the time too, because every time something else comes along, whether it's LO or Peach or Pear or there's been or Diaspora. There's been
Diaspora.
So many.
There's a throwback. Yeah.
Is it going to be the new Twitter killer, Facebook killer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And the only big thing that's really broken through in the last few years is TikTok. And that's a whole other ball of wax. And I have lots of opinions on TikTok. But will Mastodon do it? Like a lot of people have complained that Mastodon being a federated model, and I'll let you explain what that is for our folks out there, our parents, that it may be a little too complicated for normies. And from what I've seen in the Mastodon has evolved a little bit over the years, but not a ton. And I see those issues, and there's some other issues, and we can, as we discuss some of these things, we can get into that, and maybe some of your responses to addressing the challenges that people might have. I almost accidentally quit my web browser, but luckily luckily Chrome does the hold down command Q to quit, so I got that actually bailed me out. So we've got a few links in the show notes. All your burning questions of Mastodon, a New York article about what fleeing Twitter users will and won't find on Mastodon, and then we've got some how-tos on how to get started on Mastodon. One from Wired. I thought I had another one in there too, and then a little bit on getting verified on Mastodon, which isn't necessarily what you think it is. But Gray, to you, now that we've preambled it a bit,
Yeah.
In short, what is Mastodon aside from like a heavy metal band?
So Mastodon, it's a Twitter clone. And the idea here is that it is decentralized instead of centralized. Twitter runs all of Twitter's servers. Mastodon takes this federated approach, which means that you can run your own instance of Mastodon. You set up a server, people can sign up for the Mastodon service through your server, and they're basically given almost like an email address style address. So, mine is @graywilliams@mstdn.ca, because the mstdn.ca is my instance server. The fediverse is sort of the bigger federated universe of Mastodon servers. And all of the instances subscribe to what's going on with the other ones with something that's called, I think it's ActivityPub. And ActivityPub basically publishes all of the stuff that we do out to all of the other Mastodon servers. The cool thing here is this
kind
is
of like the glue that connects the fediverse together.
Yeah. And so instead of having this centralized group with these centralized servers, we have decentralized servers that are all talking to each other in a peer-to-peer sort of way. It's fast. It works. Challenges are you can't sell ads against it currently right now. There's no real centralized ad service that would do that. So if ads are going to be on it, they're going to be done in the form of sponsored posts or whatnot through individual users. And I mean, there's no lock in here. If you want to go off to another instance, you can. So, I mean, looking at it right now, it's more complex, right? You have to find an instance that you want, set up an account there, and then you're kind of good to go and build your Mastodon experience as you see fit. If you wanted to use the Mastodon website, the server's website, you can. There are also apps. I'm using meta text on iOS, and that's working quite nicely. I always looked at Mastodon and thought, it would take someone literally burning Twitter to the ground in order for this thing to take off. It's a little like
close.
It's a little like in 2011 when somebody from Panasonic was like, "We want to use QR codes," and I'm like, "There would have to be a global pandemic for people to want to use." But I literally said that to Doug Borbath.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I need to stop saying things. Really, is what it comes down to.
So just a quick clarification: your Mastodon handle, is it @GrayWilliams@mstdn.ca or is it @Gray?
It's @Gray@mstdn.ca.
Okay, that's what I thought. So I'll just
yeah.
edit that a little bit and get your lower third going
nice.
Right here for those following at home.
And it's interesting, like my Twitter experience, which ended pretty much Saturday. I think this is still connected to my Twitter account and whatnot. I'm not going to be actively. I obviously canceled my Twitter Blue, and I'm not going to be engaging on Twitter. What happened on Saturday was the straw. I left when he came along the first time. I came back on January 8th when he was gone. I've left for a second time, and he says he's not coming back. Right now, this is sort of a Elon. No, So Mastodon, here we are. I'm enjoying it so far.
So let's dig into some of the quirks a little bit on Mastodon. You had mentioned you have to choose a server, or you can set up your own server, or an instant. Now, setting up your own server, it's not necessary. It's not quite like a Discord server where it's still hosted, by the main organization. This is actually you having to have a web hosting account somewhere, virtual machine somewhere in the cloud, and you're actually running the Mastodon software. So it's not necessarily for the faint of heart, though I imagine there may be like one-click installs as part of some hosting packages and whatnot. Do I have that straight there on the paradigm we're talking about when it comes to quote unquote server?
You do, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm actually looking at setting up a Mastodon for us so that we have our own Mastodon server.
And when it comes to choosing your own server, a server is not, so if you don't want to set up your own server, because that is a bit of a lift for some folks, you want to choose a server to participate in. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of servers currently out there. The two largest ones, from my understanding, the original set up by the founder of Mastodon, is Mastodon.social was the original, and then Mastodon.online was the second one. And each of those has over 100,000 users on them. And last time I checked, neither of them were accepting new users. And I don't know if they open it up every once in a while as they add capacity. I've seen that same issue for years and years, frankly. So, and of course, there's a huge crush right now. And there are tools within Mastodon to go and search and filter through different server instances based on your geography, based on your interests, based on the types of policies. So can you describe the control that each of the moderators of a certain server has over the discourse on that, which is kind of different from a blanket policy on a platform such as Twitter or Facebook?
Yeah, so basically it is a localized content protection policy. So you do have localized moderators. Realistically speaking, I think the vast majority of servers are probably going to take a very similar approach in the next little while that Twitter has to a lot of this. I think there are going to be some that are going to be the bastions of free speech, and good for them. And I think there are going to be quite a few who are going to take a look at the content and moderation policies that we saw at Twitter. The fascinating thing is that just at the time when Twitter is being crushed by a complete dearth, a complete excise of technological and social moderating talent, Mastodon is in desperate need of it. I wonder what all those folks are going to do with their 3 months paid from Elon.
Volunteer gigs at Mastodon instances.
What better way to crush your old job than to basically build out its replacement on their dime?
Exactly. And one of the interesting aspects too of the Mastodon fediverse, at least, is, and when we say fediverse, it's the federated universe of decentralized apps, including Mastodon, and there are literally dozens of others, most of which most regular folks haven't heard of, but there's alternatives to YouTube and all sorts of other things out there. And your mileage may vary, to be clear. One of the reasons people choose these sorts of options is because they can create their own policies, and some of those policies may or may not jive with your personal value system. So as such, Mastodon gives control not only over the moderation policies, but of the federation policies as well between servers. Could you explain that a little bit?
I don't really understand it. I'm not going to lie to you.
So as a moderator so my understanding is that as a moderator of a Mastodon instance, because there is like when you sign up for Mastodon, you're not necessarily getting the whole fire hose of content throughout all the servers. You prioritize the stuff on your own instance, or first your connections, then your instance, and then the connected instances to your. And a moderator can choose which other servers or instances of Mastodon out there that it actually allows incoming feeds from, and it can block others that they may have philosophical differences with. That's what I'm talking about.
It's a little like BBS's back in the day, where you had interconnected web boards or interconnected message boards, and some services would just drop people off. So yeah, okay, that makes sense.
So in a way, like there's in my mind, this is kind of like subreddits, but if subreddits could be connected to each other and pull in feeds from other subreddits, like, because a lot of these Mastodon instances are not only geographic but like topic based and whatnot. And if you want a broader view of things, it's really interesting because there's no algorithm at play necessarily, aside from the very basic one of the prioritization of your connections, your instance, and then the feeds from the other instances too. So people have to wrap their minds around that a little bit, because you might be like, well, where's the stuff from the people, right? Because, and you can follow people on other instances, but you have to go and find them. And your instance, your server may not, the searching is a little on the sluggish side, I found,
Mm.
especially if you're just typing in a name. If you have someone's exact address, it's a little quicker. Part of that may be a function of the current load.
I think it's getting
so
hammered.
many new users happening. But again, it's decentralized, so that's supposed to help solve that problem, right? So it's a question of how reliable is each of the given servers on there, what's hosting are they on, what are their connections like, et cetera, et cetera. Are they just on Bluehost, or are they on AWS? Like, I don't even know where people are hosting their stuff nowadays. And a lot of these are in Europe. Like Mastodon is quite popular in Europe, and it's interesting to see some of the cultural differences. I've seen Twitter users, especially a number of Twitter users of color, because we all know Black Twitter is a thing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of culture there, and a lot of them I've seen have come to Mastodon and gone, y'all so white here. and so it's not necessarily as simple as like, oh, everyone's going to rage quit Twitter and they're going to go to Mastodon. It's like they have to find somewhere where they feel at home, and they, from policy wise and also peer wise as well. So it's a really fascinating time. Is this going to be Mastodon's moment, or is it where people are going to get too confused? Are they going to are they just like not wonder why it doesn't work the way they do? Because as much as people rail against the algorithms, and myself included, I just want to see a chronological list of posts, and you can sometimes do that on Twitter and Facebook when they deem it you worthy of being able to do so. What their research has found, all of these social platforms, is we engage more with content that's been provided by the algorithm to us. Like that is the whole nub of this issue. And it's like they know better what we want than we say we want. Right?
You said something interesting there.
Yeah.
We engage more with content when it's provided by the algorithm.
Oh yeah.
That's not what end users want. That's what advertisers want.
Oh, for sure.
Right. As end users, I don't want to engage more. I want my chronological list of things. I want to get the information that I want, and then I want to go away. The Twitter addiction of like always something new, always something fresh. Here you go. You're going to miss something. Actually was detrimental. I'm very thankful to Elon for helping me kick it, because in the space of about a day, I was like, wow, I am basically, Twitter nicotine free right now. Amazing. I catch myself muscle memory opening the app every once in a while. Nope, we're good. First quit. Bye. So it's, we engage more is such an interesting metric by which to go, because sure, we're really digging into the network more, and it's like, but I never really wanted that in the beginning, so I would like to actually go outside and touch grass. And
there's and that's we all speaks to personality types, to how we manage our own behavior and things like that, because the engagement, like with as a you say you don't necessarily want to engage more, you want to get in and out, but on a macro scale, what people's desires are measured by their actions, right? And when they spend more time consuming a certain thing, but the dwell time on a certain post, the likes, the retweets, the comments, the quote tweets, all of those things, the sharing via direct message, all of that stuff is measured by Twitter and say all the other platforms. So they're like, okay, you like this, we're going to give you more stuff you like, and that is the curse of that's part of the thing about the social dilemma, right? Anyway, big issues.
You've actually hit on something here, which is we've never really had a social media platform ripped apart from the inside at arguably a fairly stable place. We've never had this happen. MySpace was descending. Snapchat never really got there. Orkut, nah.
It's huge in Brazil.
Nah, right? And it's like $44 billion to tear this thing down from the inside. And he is tearing it down. And so looking at this, it's like we've all said that it would be great to have the ability to reboot some of this stuff because it wasn't good for us. And this is actually it's taking it back to a fairly primitive place where Twitter was. Like I said, this feels like a 90s BBS. So maybe now we've been able to turn back time and
share.
We get a chance to do this again. So that could be the best thing that comes out of this, is not that, Mastodon replaces Twitter, but it becomes what Twitter never could be, because it was never really given the chance, because we didn't know how terrible things were at the time. So it's kind of This could be exciting.
And it's all happening with a tremendous amount of transparency too, thanks to like eating the Twitter dog fooding. And so one of the things we got to be careful of on Mastodon is that what I've noticed is that there's a lot of people on Mastodon talking about Mastodon and talking about Twitter. And it's like, okay, so let's get with the regular stuff, folks, because otherwise it's just becomes a funny little echo chamber of its own. But I've enjoyed it a little bit so far. It's again very different. Oh, and one of the things too is that Mastodon was designed to be antiviral. Mm-hmm. Which I think there's a number of shades of meaning potentially to that. So you got to be careful if you think you're going to go and get on Mastodon and be the next giant influencer. You've got another thing coming, because it's not easy for things to spread as rapidly as on other social platforms. You can still do a few things like follow lots of people. Maybe some of them will follow you back and whatnot. But because not everything gets to every other server necessarily as quickly, because it's designed with friction in mind. So yeah, so it's early days yet. We're only 5 years into Mastodon, and we're only a few weeks, believe it or not, into the Twitter 2.0. So some people have commented that Twitter right now actually feels more like old Twitter, because a lot of stuff is being stripped away and being re-engineered and whatnot. So we shall see. Now, one thing I wanted to touch on before we moved on, some other more good news-ish type stuff, is the question of verification, because we all know what a contentious issue that has been. It seemed kind of arbitrary. The new verification system with Twitter Blue is stupid. They're rethinking that, but there is an issue on Mastodon. Like, there is no way to actually have a blue check mark on Mastodon, so you could impersonate whoever you want on there. What you can do is, some people are just, there's two things. One, some people are just adding emoji check marks and pretending that's a verified thing, because a lot of people don't know any better, and that's like a fun scam. But the other thing you can do is verify ownership of certain websites. So there is, in the About tab for your profile, you can list websites that you own, and then through a process, it's probably adding a tag to it or something like that, you can demonstrate to the Mastodon server that you're on that you actually control that website. So that is a form of verification ID, which is something, but it's not that fancy blue check mark that was so sought after by people for a while. So just beware that there may be people out there impersonating others unless they've verified their websites. So check the About tab. That's the only caveat. Yeah.
I was trying to get a blue check mark there for a couple of years on Twitter. I finally got it. It was bittersweet.
Money talks. And you voted with your dollar cents too, and that's how the market works, right?
Yes, indeed, I did. I didn't let the door hit me where the good Lord split me. So.
All right, next up, we'll just do this real quick. As our good friends south of the border, when they're not tearing their hair out about Twitter and the like, a lot of them are going to be shopping in a couple of days, the day after Thanksgiving. So we've got American Thanksgiving tomorrow, and then we got Black Friday. Woo! So a couple of links. We have a video at the end that we'll share with you as well. But of course, there's lots of articles coming from all our favorite tech websites. Some of the things at their lowest prices ever. One of the things that our colleague and friend Tasia mentions in her video that we'll tag at the end is that prices fluctuate up and down all throughout not only the year, but even throughout so-called Black Friday sales. So be careful. And Gray, what's your favorite tool for tracking prices on Amazon? Camel.
Well, I think I mentioned it before on the show that certain retailers absolutely are using techniques to violate the spirit of the Canadian Retail Council's pricing guide. And so, if you take a look, a product that may have been no longer on shelves, may have been brought back onto shelves through their e-stores 2 or 3 months ago at a ridiculously inflated price in order to give you a discounted price. So something, you look at it and you're like 90% off.
Wow.
That may well be nonsense, and go and take a look at the historical prices of these things. And don't just compare that particular SKU in that particular store. Do a quick search around to see if it actually has been at that price anytime recently.
So from this quick 7 things currently at the lowest price ever for Black Friday, Gray, we've got a JBL Go 3 portable speaker, Nintendo Switch Mario Kart 8 Deluxe bundle, not featuring the voice of Chris Pratt. We have a AirPods Pro 2nd generation, so not the third generation, to be clear.
No, AirPods Pro are only on second. You're
Oh,
thinking
they're
of
only on second.
AirPods.
Okay, so this is
AirPods
the
on three.
one. This is the.
These are the good ones.
Yeah, the image is. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's the right image
Yep,
though.
it is because it's
Okay,
got.
because it doesn't show the speaker on the because that's on the other side.
No, it's
And
down there.
USB 3.
But bottom right.
Oh, it's at the bottom. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a thing on the what is it on the on the flip side that is a different little disc that's embedded in the back. Anyway, it could be the charging thing because they charge with MagSafe now.
Correct.
So AirPods 2 second gen, Echo Dot 5th gen. Oh, we're not even talking about the Alexa ecosystem right now, and that's maybe blowing up as we speak. And Hue Smart Bulb, Tony Box audio player starter set. Oh, that's a thing for kids. We got a Pixel 6a from, I guess it was just this past summer before the Pixel 7 came out. Strange strategy that Google's been doing. And the Bella Pro Series 8-quart air fryer. So if someone put a gun to your head, Gray, and said, you got to put one of these on your list either to give to someone else. And I know that here we always resist rampant consumerism a little bit. We like to focus on experiences. We also like to focus on shopping local whenever possible. But we also do talk a lot of tech. So if there's something here that maybe you wanted to add to your own list and or get for someone else, which of these 7 things speak to you most? I know it speaks to me.
To be honest, so here's the thing. If I was going to give a gift on the AirPods Pro 2, I think those are like these things. They're like cybernetic ears. I walk around with them with nothing playing because the conversation enhancer is so good. They're remarkable. They're beyond remarkable. I've used them in woodworking as earplugs because you can have the adaptive noise cancellation. They're that good. So this, and as a close second, the air fryer because come on.
Yes, we've been enjoying our air fryer lid that we got last year and added to our Instant Pot.
Yeah.
And that's been great because we limited shelf space and whatnot. So if you have space for a dedicated air fryer, something like this, I don't know the reviews on this particular model, but it's who doesn't love fried food? And if it doesn't kill you quite as quickly, all the better.
Right.
I have to admit, my number one pick is also the AirPods Pro 2. I've loved all my AirPods. I love them. I can't say I love them all equally like children, but my first generation AirPods Pro have been wonderful. And Gray, having owned both sets, if one already owns the current ones, is it like a worthwhile upgrade or wait till you just kind of grind them into dust before upgrading?
No, I'd upgrade. Now, here's the thing. I leave my AirPods Pro everywhere, so being able to find the case is huge.
Right.
That's massive. It having a speaker in it.
The case will make a sound, not just the AirPods when you're trying to use Find My, correct?
Yeah, and you can also get your emoji on the front. Here's the thing. My AirPods Pro, once the batteries were starting to go, and I honestly, I had misplaced that case somewhere in this room, somewhere in this house so many times. I have saved myself $300 worth of stress by actually just getting these. So there you go. Not a bitter pill to swallow.
And if people want to browse all sorts of other Black Friday deals, there's 53 deals here that you can check out and under $25. So stocking stuffers and the like. So go nuts. But again, we'll provide a link to Tasia's video at the end as well. Let's get into some more Gray specific content, some stuff we've been saving a little bit while you were away. And that is a few things. There's a few stories. One very recent, just today. Speaking of Black Friday, there is MetaQuest 2 bundle with Resident Evil 4 and Beat Saber is just $350 for Black Friday. So to be clear, this isn't the new MetaQuest Pro, which we're going to be talking about in just a moment. This is the model that I believe came out, was it last year or the year before? Just actually had a $100 price increase, $100 US price increase. So now we're saving a bit of money again. And adding is it Resident Evil? Is it a first-person horror shooter, or is it? Oh boy! That in VR, that sounds like nightmare fuel to me.
It really is. This game takes place in sort of like a Europe. The president's daughter has been kidnapped, and so I think your character's named Leon. You're sent in to this Eastern European village, which has been taken over by a cult.
Okay.
Which there are these weird insect-like things inside their bodies controlling them. The first time I played it on GameCube, I chucked my controller across the room and didn't bother with it for 6 weeks. And so doing this in first person, I think I'm pronouncing this correctly. F that noise.
So you have not partaken of said nightmare fuel quite yet, eh? I wonder what this kind of stuff is going to do to our brains, in all honesty, because we've seen how social media, how smartphone use, how, just so all these electronic interactions we have literally been rewiring our brains. Now, once we stick these things on our faces and we engage with these kinds of experiences, are we going to be inducing trauma in people?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Mission accomplished.
I mean, video games already do that to a certain degree. I had emotional trauma after The Last of Us. I'm not kidding. I talked to my therapist about it.
Oh boy.
It's a rough ending to that game.
Now, given that the MetaQuest 2 has been out a while, and we've just MetaQuest Pro, which is much more expensive and more developer centric and whatnot, is coming out. And who knows how long till a MetaQuest 3. Would you advise if people are VR curious to partake of a deal like this to get in, or should they wait for the next refinement, maybe in a year or two, when we finally see the 3?
Honestly, for the price, this is fantastic. The MetaQuest Pro, don't bother with unless your company is paying for it. The MetaQuest 3, it's fascinating because, Mark's just flushing cash right now. And I think the Quest Pro is
they've been selling it at a loss, right?
Yeah, and the Quest Pro is sort of the interesting thing where, I was talking to one of our clients today at work, and I just said, I love VR, and I think it's really, really cool. I don't want to go to work in VR. I don't want to meet people.
You want to sit at a boardroom table and talk to people's memojis or whatever Facebook calls their ones?
No, AR, XR, I could possibly see. I could see maybe a projection of the person where I can see through and I can see my house. But locking myself down.
To be clear, that's augmented reality and extended reality for those playing bingo at home. All right.
But yeah, it's just this is fun, right? Supernatural is a great workout app. Beat Saber is a great workout app. Resident Evil 4 is a great app to help drive up your therapist bills. Fantastic, really, really good stuff. VR chat. Apparently, the kids love VR chat. And I tried that once, and I could basically hear some Matthew McConaughey words, and all right. I'm like, I am out.
And some of this might be generational too, right? It could be our old man yells at cloud kicking in. And
no, man, this is like IRC crowd from the mid-90s. It was the same stuff, just with animated figurines. I've been there, I've done that. I'm good.
I'll take a different form. Now, can you? I know that you've been playing this for a while since you got your MetaQuest 2. Can you reiterate for us what Beat Saber is, the gameplay mechanics, and how that might be a good intro for people into the VR gameplay space?
Oh yeah, for sure. So you've got two swords, one in your left hand, one in your right hand. Songs have been turned into these boxes that flow towards you in time with the music, and they basically tell you which sword you have to hit them with in which direction. You're basically looking to cut the boxes in half. It's like if Fruit Ninja and Tetris had a baby, and so
okay, gotcha.
With Napster as the nanny, I don't know, but so there are a lot of, you can side load a version of this song where you can put any song you want. But since Facebook acquired the studio that creates Beat Saber, we're starting to see more and more music packs. And I just picked up the Lizzo music pack, which is delightful. And so, yeah, you got everything from Green Day to Imagine Dragons to Lizzo to I think there's some Skrillex in there. It's a blast. It's a ton of fun. I sweat my butt off, and it's a really great way to work out in VR. And then your friends and family could also get video of you looking like an idiot. I brought this to a camping retreat up in the interior, pardon me. And I let friends try it, and fun is playing the game, and even more fun is watching your friends play the game for the first time. It is ridiculous.
So moving on to the MetaQuest Pro, which was released recently and has been getting into the hands of reviewers, it's receiving decidedly mixed reviews. For one, it's $1,499 as opposed to $399 or $349 on sale for Black Friday. Some of the complaints include the weight of the headset and also the shorter battery life. But as mentioned, it seems to be more directed toward developers. What is? Do you have any thoughts on the MetaQuest Pro? Is this a smart part of Mark's plan, or is this a fumble?
This is Google Glass 2.0 at the same price point.
Oh,
it's not going anywhere. It might give them some good data, and they might their partners who maybe are too all in to get out might end up funding this, but they marketed this wrong. their announcements where they had the initial sales was being frequented entirely by VR aficionados.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the disappointment was rank. Like
So,
I was sitting in
yeah,
McDonald's eating a McMuffin
a
and just
virtual McMuffin.
no, like a real McMuffin, and I probably would have been better if it was virtual. But like watching the kids react to this was like they were pissed, and like everything from the nickeling and diming on the accessories, they just
Mm-hmm.
like who was this for, at what time? The partnership
So,
with Microsoft was just like, oh yes, fantastic, great. Teams is on board. Heavens, that's what I was waiting for the metaverse.
well, that way it can burn through your battery life even quicker.
All right, yikes.
So, is this a bit of a toaster fridge scenario where it's maybe not, it's not pro enough for the pros and the developers is maybe to be aiming at, or if they maybe should have made it like a $3,000 device like that Apple's is rumored to be, and have it the full on so the developers can experience what this platform is truly capable of, not even have any aspirations toward consumer penetration here, but they didn't go far enough. And then we're kind of in this messy middle ground where consumers looking at that going, well, that's kind of cool, but I'm not paying $1,500. Do you think that's the problem?
100%, yeah. And like looking at this, there isn't enough of a technological jump for it to be worth the type of attention that I think maybe they thought it might garner.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like it hasn't even really garnered that attention. It's again, it's this weird Osbornification of the MetaQuest 3 is going to come, and yeah, it's just it feels like I said, this feels like Google Glass, where it is more powerful than the vacuum that was there before, but the Tegra that powered the Google Glass was not good enough to do what it needed to do next. And looking at this, it's plenty powerful, but it doesn't do anything really well and above and beyond. And so like they showed some really cool use cases, and I friggin' yawned through most of it. So
So again, for those playing at home, Osbornification refers to the Osborne effect, whereby back in the 1980s, when the Osborne one computer, one of the first luggables, similar to say a K-Pro, which is like a suitcase computer, probably I think maybe 60 pounds or so, it was released. Then the founder, Mr. Osborne, I don't remember his first name, he soon after started talking about the Osborne 2, and maybe a little too soon, and hence tanking the sales of the Osborne 1. And so there is this it's a cautionary tale about companies maybe not talking up their next generation products too soon before they come out, while their current products are still selling, unless of course they do some deep discounting of the current products and whatnot, or unless it's like a brand new product category for said company, then you could pre-announce like Apple did with the iPhone 6 months ahead of time, with the Apple Watch about 6 months ahead of time, and so on, because they've got nothing to cannibalize in that sense. But speaking of Osbornification, then that leads us to our next story, is that we're getting leaks about the PSVR 2, the PlayStation VR 2, which is a tethered device, tethered to one's PlayStation 5. And lots of information is coming out about this, and the VR 1 is still being sold. Now, is it that it's, no one's really buying it much anyway, the VR1, the PSVR 1, so it's no big whoop. What's your take on Sony's strategy here, Gray, on the hardware side of things, looking at the specs, the fact that it's still tethered, albeit I think with a single cord now instead of multiple, and talking it up when the other hardware is still for sale?
So PSVR was tied into the PlayStation 4. Right. And there are still lots of folks out there who have not upgraded to a PlayStation 5. They don't have the ability to, and they haven't been able to find one. So PSVR 1, if you're looking at it and going, it's a fairly old SKU. I'd be surprised to find that many units in the market right now. Sony has, I think, pushed the release of this back into 2023.
Yep.
And so they're driving hype, and I think the hype that they're driving is basically to Shanghai any further sales of MetaQuest stuff.
Yep.
Right.
They're strategic in that sense, a competitive strategic move. Yeah.
Yes, it's wired, but you don't have a VR headset anyway, so you won't know the difference. And look at how much more amazing this is. And let's not kid ourselves. Like, the quality of experience that apparently is involved is unreal. So,
from what you've heard about the PSVR 2?
yeah.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question. Is it's one thing to compare it to the PSVR that that ran off of the PlayStation 4, but from what you've seen of the leaked specs so far on the PSVR 2, and given that they're talking about a $550 US target price point as opposed to $399 US for the MetaQuest 2 at the moment. I don't know if we know what the 3 is going to be. Is this going to be competitive features wise, and especially given that it's $150 more US?
Yeah, I think anyone that owns a PlayStation 5 who's been able to acquire one, who has paid the money for one, is probably looking at this and looking at the MetaQuest 2 and going, okay, I want to maximize the investment I've made in the PS5. I'm going to wait for this thing. And the MetaQuest 2 is not a contemporary of this. The MetaQuest 3 will be.
Right. So it's just a bit of leapfrog, basically.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Sony work on a wireless broadcasting system for this with a battery pack. I would be very surprised if that is not, as they get closer to launch, either announced with or promised within the first year. It makes like a 60 gigahertz transmitter would make a ton of sense.
So one of the launch titles that's being talked about is Horizon Call of the Wild, which I think Horizon Forbidden West was available in a bundle for the PS5, which we got, and it's a beautiful game. So imagine that in VR, powered by the horsepower of the PS5. Again, for those who are fortunate enough to be able to secure one. And I have to admit for myself too, like I'm VR curious. Let's put it that way. I mean, I tried the original Oculus Rift back in the day, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. It might be neat for games. I'm not sure if this is ever going to go mainstream. But if I was ever to take the dive, I would be inclined, rather than going with the MetaQuest 2, like, well, I've already got a PS5, fortunately enough, so maybe I would go with the thing that works with that. Even though it's tethered, because I probably wouldn't be using it a ton anyway. But even more just to learn about that platform and skate to where the puck is going a little bit, and make an assessment for myself if this is really going to catch on in the ways that some people believe it might be, or if it's really just getting us used to the putting things on our face to get us into augmented reality and mixed reality and extended reality and the like. I think the VR experience is more of a limited at home kind of thing. Lots of people are gaming on them. But I don't know if we're going to, like, to your point, if we're going to be working on them quite so much. And that's where a lightweight AR glasses experience might be a bit more appealing. And Apple. So, and we'll see what, our favorite fruit company ends up doing in that space as well. So lastly, I just added this in because I know you're a huge fan. There was a story that came out a couple of weeks ago from the original founder of Oculus, Palmer Luckey. He's been doing some work as a military contractor and has created a VR headset that kills you if you die in the game. Now, I don't know if this is just like a PR stunt or what, but
I got 2 words for Palmer on this one. You first.
Yeah, exactly. I suspect our good friend will not be the first to try this one either. I'm not exactly sure what the point of this is. I suspect it's more of a publicity stunt, get people talking, get some attention, and focus on some of the other stuff that he's doing there. But I mean, when they say about poops getting real, there you go. Yep. Now, what happens if you have one of these headsets on and then you fall asleep and then you dream that you die? Do you die? Is that? Oh, sorry, no, it's more meta territory.
Oh, yes! Woo!
Yeah. Thanks. I'll be here all night. Tip your waitress.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Very quickly, other news that just broke. There's a couple stories that broke today. We're not going to get to all of them, but how's it going? Not great, Bob. Or, I mean, there's Mad Men reference. We could do the old
I wouldn't
Mankind
say
reference / Newhart shoot. Yeah, Newhart.
I was going to say, I wouldn't say I was missing it, Bob.
Oh, the Office Space reference too. Yeah, so for Newhart and For All Mankind, it's the Hi Bob.
Yep.
So in
Guess
short,
who's back? Back again. I just back. Tell a friend.
So in short, about 2.5, was it 2.5 years after leaving Disney, but remaining the executive, chairman of the board at Disney, Bob Iger has come back to replace his replacement, Bob Chapek, who had a rough go here and there with a few different issues, but was basically executing on Bob Iger's strategy, going all streaming first, et cetera, et cetera. But storm clouds are gathering in the streaming world, and a lot of companies are scaling back, realizing they've been spending so much money, and maybe things that maybe have flatlined a bit, with pandemic restrictions easing up in a lot of parts of the world. People aren't cocooning quite as much, and these creators are realizing how much money they're spending. So pulling back a bit because the profits haven't been there. There's pressure from shareholders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Bob Chapek just got re-signed to a new 2-year contract in June. But now he got fired by the board, like just over the weekend, and now Bob Iger is back in the saddle to, I guess, course correct on his original strategy and maybe find a new replacement for him going forward. Gray, do you think there's going to be much change in our day-to-day experience of what we experience of Disney, whether it's Disney proper, Pixar, Star Wars, Marvel? Are we going to see fewer of these shows that we've been enjoying so much, like Andor and the like? Or
no, I don't think so. But I think there are certain Disney properties that Iger I think understands better than Chapek. I also understands consumer relations better than Chapek. He just never seemed to really resonate with people. We're going to find out eventually that Chapek is actually just a failed clone of Iger and has been summarily executed by the both light and dark side of the board there.
The checksum didn't add up, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's basically, this is just a ripoff of, what was the second Star Wars movie that we didn't go see? Force Awakens. What was the second one?
Oh, the Return of the... No,
not the Last Jedi?
The Last Jedi, yes.
The Last Jedi, yeah. So basically, this is just a real life The Last Jedi. They put him in place so they could take him down. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Tossing that lightsaber over the shoulder. All right. And then last up then, we got a little trailer for a new Pixar. I have to confess, I haven't seen the last few Pixar movies. There's just so much media nowadays. One of the tropes that we've kind of that people have identified, or maybe
is that a C-bus?
Something looked like it. One of the things that people have noticed about Pixar movies over the years is that was it Toy Story? Toys have feelings. Bugs Life, insects have feelings, and eventually we got to the ultimate. The apotheosis of the whole notion whereby in Inside Out feelings have feelings.
Which they followed up later with What If Canadians Have Feelings, I believe was Turning Red, something like that. That was the most recent one. Yes.
Again, that's one I haven't had a chance to see. But now we've got a trailer for Elemental, and it's like, what if the 4 earth elements of medieval lore had feelings? And this looks interesting. It's more of a teaser than a trailer. It's just you're getting kind of the vibe of the universe. Some beautiful animation, whether it's earthy people or fiery people or watery people or airy people. It's a neat angle to explore, and as always, Pixar is trying to push the envelope animation-wise too. And so we're blending 4 different elements together in the same space. In the past, like with Monsters Inc., they were really working on hair, for example. I don't really. Each movie that Pixar does, they're trying to solve a technical problem and push the envelope in terms of animation quality. And it's crazy to think of the amount of computing horsepower that goes into each of these. Any first impressions on seeing this little teaser for Elemental, Greg? Are you in?
It looked like both a Skybus and a Skytrain in there, so I'm hoping that the transit system is based on Vancouver's transit system. And on that alone, I will go see it.
Okay, so I'll take that as a yes. Coming soon. Pick of the week from you is an oldie from 10 years ago. Hard to believe it's been since this movie came out, which I'll let you talk about.
Yeah, so Colin Farrell plays a screenwriter in Los Angeles. This is a Los Angeles movie talking with Los Angelinos talking about Hollywood and the life therein. It is it's called Seven Psychopaths. So the screenplay that he's writing is called Seven Psychopaths as well. So it is also meta. And so looking at this, it's got that self-indulgent Hollywood looking at itself style dialogue. It's got this like slightly overexposed yellowish color grade, and it's got dialogue that really, again, it feels like it fell off the wagon at a discount 90s script sale, by which I mean it's amazing. Colin Farrell, Sam Rockwell, Woody Harrelson, Christopher Walken,
What a
Tom
cast.
Waits showed up. Yeah, just absolutely fantastic. Loved it. The first half of it, I was like, really, like this is all you are. And then the turn happened. I'm like, oh, you're so much smarter than I thought you were. I love you. It's great. It's great.
I think we only saw it just a couple of years ago. It might have been a pandemic watch for us, and we enjoyed it quite a bit here. If you're into Sam Rockwell, we seem to have caught up in a bunch of Sam Rockwell movies over the last couple of years, including
The Lobster?
Mr. Right.
Okay.
We haven't seen The Lobster yet.
Ooh, you're for a treat.
Isn't Colin Farrell in The Lobster? Or no,
Oh, sorry. You're talking about Sam Rockwell. I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
I was
Colin
already
Farrell,
dubbed that.
he's in The Lobster, which I've not seen yet, but he's also in Bruges. So I think if you liked In Bruges, you'd probably enjoy Seven
Yes.
Psychopaths as well. And and I finally got around to seeing the other Sam Rockwell movie with the Chuck Barris story, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind.
So not Charlie's Angels, right?
Yes, quite a trip there. My pick of the week.
Can I interrupt for just one second?
Of course. Yeah.
So Colin Farrell, right?
I mean, Penguin.
Yeah, well, yes, but you have two Marvel villains here, Justin Hammer and Bullseye.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Sam Rockwell was Justin Hammer, and Colin Farrell played Bullseye.
Okay.
Yeah. There you
Interesting. Yeah. So, and then he's also Colin Farrell straddling the universes. He's the Marvel side, and on DC did an amazing job as Penguin. Is totally unrecognizable in the Batman.
Yes, indeed.
Speaking of Marvel, I had an opportunity to see relatively early in its run, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, which I enjoyed. It's my one comment on this, and I hope this isn't a spoiler for anyone that's been paying attention for the last few years to celebrities. Is there's a certain character who's no longer alive, and it may be a pretty significant character, but the movie it's kind of banking on not just the grief over the loss of that character, but the grief over the loss of that actor. And it's a strange phenomenon. Let me just put it that way, because I'm watching this going, okay, I get it. And they handled it about as best as they could. Right? Like they didn't wait 5 years and recast the character altogether, a la War Machine, for example. Yep. They just leaned right into it. And it wasn't a huge surprise in terms of replacing said character. But I enjoyed it. It has introduced us to a new world and a new peoples as well. And it wasn't perfect by any stretch. I would call it maybe like a solid 7.5. But yeah, I enjoyed it. But but the thing that stuck out the most to me was just that weird phenomenon. Is like that blurring between the cinematic world and the real world. And yeah, so I look forward to your take on it once you've had a chance to check it out, Gray.
Okay.
Definitely well done, within a very challenging environment. So you've got a project to share with us this week before we wrap up.
Yeah, so this was kind of exciting. I received a call from Andrew Chang from CBC just before I left on vacation, and he was talking about a new show that they're bringing to streaming called About That, and he said, like some of the conversations that we had in the past really, they fit the style of this, and so basically he said, would you be interested in being our correspondent contributor going forwards for technology? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. Yes, I've loved my chats with Andrew when I was on CDC Vancouver. So when I was down in Mexico, the whole FTX thing happened, and I started getting calls from people. And so Andrew and his producer Rachel just gave me a quick email and said, "Hey, would you be available?" I had a gut feeling that they might call about something, so I'd actually brought a headset with me. I brought a little bit of equipment, and so I had all of it ready to go. And we did the call live on hotel Wi-Fi, and it turned out fairly well. So this is something that you can look forward to when I've got new segments. I'll share them here, and yeah, if you jump ahead a little bit, I think you'll see
Where are
I'm
you? Okay,
just after here,
he's doing the whiteboard thing here. Okay, he's doing the old Glenn Beck style. And
and there's me
there you are,
with
looking
my
good.
freshly purchased shirt the day before. The sad thing was I was on my iPad, so I'm looking at him on the screen, and the iPad is not doing the eye correction thing.
Oh,
So
the weird thing that they gave up on.
yeah, so in the future done on the laptop, but yeah.
No, it's good, and that's why I always travel with the gear as well too, because you never know,
Yeah.
and whether it's doing something like a media hit like that, or even just streaming Momentous live, it's good to as we continue our digital nomad lifestyle, even if it's just nomading once in a while.
Yeah.
So good stuff. I remember talking to Andrew like from CES a number of years ago too. A good guy. So this is streaming only at the moment, correct?
Yeah, and I believe that's actually the decision there. It's looking not to be a breaking news site, but more of a here's what you need to know to understand certain things show. And I think that's a really cool idea.
Awesome. And so people can find that where?
I believe it's on the CBC Gem app, and you can also find it on the CBC website.
And they should search for about that.
About that,
Awesome. Well,
yeah,
congrats on the new gig, and say hi to Andrew for me.
will do.
We have another video this week from our esteemed friend and colleague, Teja Custodi. And as hinted at earlier, it's all about the best 2022 Black Friday tech deals and 2022 Cyber Monday deals, because let's not forget, that's also a thing too. And of course, we got infected here in Canada with both of those phenomena as well. So what Tasia is going to be referring to will probably largely be US centric since she's based in Arizona, but a lot of these deals should be available in Canada too, but your mileage may vary. So if nothing else, it may give you a little bit of inspiration doing some holiday shopping, Christmas shopping for yourself sometimes, or maybe others, if you have any loved ones that you like to shop for once in a while too. And again, we always encourage folks to think about buying experiences, a little less little less e-waste that way. But we all love tech, so we got to do that once in a while, and also always consider shopping local when possible. Remember, Amazon doesn't always have the very best deals, but if they do, Tasia will be the one to tell you. And you can find her stuff at youtube.com/Tasia Custodi. And you can find out more about us at here at Momentous at momentous.tv/links. Great, we did it. That was reasonably tight.
Right?
And it's funny because sometimes when there's only two of us, we can go on and on and on, but we were disciplined. I mean, all we had to do is ignore two of the major dumpster fire stories. But I think some of our folks have been getting a little sick of that. So we'll revisit next week and go for, an hour and 45 minutes and bore everyone to tears. But it was a pleasure. It's great to have you back. And we look forward to having you going forward over the holidays, of course. And we hope to get the rest of the band back together. But until then, we hope your week is truly momentous.